and welcome to another video. And since the new Thor Love and Thunder has come out recently, I thought I would talk about the first 3-4 films and give you a little bit of a backstory behind them all. And also I want to give my opinion on something that Chris Hemsworth had said recently about the new Thor. So I'm going to give my opinion on that, so please like this video and hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and click the notification bell so you're updated about any future videos. Right, so the first Thor film I'm going to talk about is the first Thor. And the first Thor story, in the beginning there's this war between the Asgardians and the Frost Giants, and the Frost Giants are holding this casket of winners, which is got the Tesseract inside of it, which is the cube which Loki uses in the other 4 films, if that makes sense. And they're both at war with each other, the Asgardians and the Frost Giants. And obviously prior to that, there's 2 little children, which are Loki and Thor, and they both are promised that Odin says only one of you can be king one day, and they said, what, will it be me? Will it be me? And Thor says, as a little kid, I want to strike them down and fight them just like you, father. And he says, a wise king never fights and stuff. And Loki wants to be king, and he wants to be king, but he says only one of you can be king one day. So prior to that, fast forward to now, and obviously Thor comes through the throne room, and he's got his hammer, and he's acting all cocky and warrior-like. And Odin, he kneels before Odin, and Odin says, do you swear all this, he's his heir to the throne, so he wants him as the king. Obviously Odin is Thor's real son, so he favours him more over Loki, which I will get to in a minute. And so then there's a pause because the Frost Giants break into the vault where the casket of winners is staying, and they're trying to steal it from Odin. And Loki and Thor come in the room afterwards, after they've stopped the Frost Giants with this big thing which is called the Destroyer, which destroys the Frost Giants. And then Odin comes in and says, what I don't get is, in the actual film, the casket is on the floor, and then suddenly there's a magic camera trick and it's back on the actual thing, which I actually found funny because I was watching it last night, the first Thor film. I was watching them because, I want to see what they look like on the new TV, because we've got a new TV recently. It's like a 4K one. And only the third one's in IMAX and the other one ain't. So I found it weird. Then you've got Thor arguing with Odin, saying, why didn't you stop them? They're going to keep doing this to you. And Loki's just sat there with his usual expression, I can't do it, because it's Tom. Tom Hiddleston plays Loki, and Chris Hemsworth plays Thor, and then Odin is Anthony Hopkins. And he does that, look, as though, oh, I'll leave you to fight, which is funny. And so they're fighting about it, and Odin's like, you're not king yet. You're not king yet, because he's arguing that he's going to be king, and he goes, you're not king yet. And obviously then they go to Jotunheim, which is another realm, which I've mentioned in my other videos. It's actually a real place in Norse mythology. And it's a frozen place where the Frost Giants live. And Loki finds out that he's a Frost Giant there as well. But obviously Thor ends up fighting all the Frost Giants. And obviously one of the Frost Giants touches Loki and he turns blue. And that's when he realises he's not just there he's like someone else now, and that there's something going on here, and he knows his real purpose, like who he is, because he didn't know who he actually was. He just thought he was in their family. So obviously Thor gets cast out from the realm because he actually broke a rule of not to go and fight, the frost giants, to go do what his father did. And Thor has an argument with Odin and says, oh, you'd be stood there giving out speeches and wouldn't care. And he's like, you're a vain, greedy, cruel boy. And then he's like, you're an old man and a fool. It's that in the actual, movie. And so he casts him out and takes his powers away and says, whoever is worthy of his hammer will be worthy of it. And the hammer goes with him, and he goes down to Midgard. Then after that, there's a scene, and I like this scene because it makes me feel bad for Loki, because I understand what it must be like being in a family that you don't belong. I mean, I don't know, because I've never felt that. Well, yeah, I actually have felt that, funnily enough, but I won't go into detail. And obviously there's a scene where Loki says, am I cursed? And then Odin says, no, you're my son. And he says, what more than that? And they have a big, massive argument because he says, you took me for a purpose. What was it? And he said, you weren't the casket wasn't the only thing you took from Newton, was it? And he said, there was a baby. So as a baby, he found him, a little frost giant, and he said to him, Odin, you was a baby, you was innocent, you was cast out on a rock to die. You're Loki's son, which is Loki, who's one of the leaders of the frost giants. So in other words, that means that Loki's a frost giant, and his true purpose is, that he's a frost giant like all of them. And they both have an argument, and Loki says, why did you take me? And Odin says, I took you because I thought one day we could find peace between the two kingdoms, between the frost giants and the Asgardians, but none of that matters anymore. So Loki, gets upset and says, why? Because so I'm no more than a stolen relic. I'm just the monster that everyone I'm just the monster that the parents tell their children at night, which is a brilliant line. And also he says, tell me, as well, really loud, which is, you can see his tear rolling down his cheek, because it's Tom Hiddleston. He's a brilliant actor as well. He plays him so well. Plays the villain so well anyway. Obviously that just means that he, in a way, doesn't belong to the family anymore, that he's got all these problems stirring up, and he finds out he's adoptive, and that he says to him, why didn't you tell me the truth of who I really was? And he says, I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to hurt you because you're my son. And obviously he then gets angry and says, because no matter how much you claim to love me, you'll never have a frost giant sitting on the throne, because he means he doesn't love him as a son, and he's never going to be on the throne, because that's all it's about. It's jealousy at the end of the day. He's jealous that Thor is better than him, and he doesn't belong now. So obviously Thor goes down on Earth as well, and there's this big, he goes down on Earth, and then he meets Jane Foster, who is Natalie Portman, and they both become friends, and S.H.I.E.L.D. takes their property as well. And obviously, long story short, Loki comes back to Thor and says that Odin has died and now I'm left in charge. And obviously he's lied to Thor, because when Thor goes back, he finds out that he's lied and that Odin's not dead, and that all he wanted to do was, destroy the frost giants, basically, his own race. He wanted to become king, basically. That was the whole aspect of the film. He wanted to become king, and he was jealous of his brother. And they both fight each other in the film, which is really cool as well. And then obviously Loki falls into the portal, which you assume he's gone and died, but he actually hasn't. He's pretty much alive. So yeah, he's pretty much alive in the next one, and the next one after Thor was Avengers, which is where he was evil. Like, he was sort of like the protagonist in this one, but then he started to become the anti-hero, which was like the villain. So yeah. Obviously the next Thor film I'm going to talk about is Dark World, which is after Avengers. I should talk about Avengers too, but I just don't want to make this video long. I want to try and make it as quick as possible, so I go through all of the films. Not as quick, but I sort of minus everything out. So the second Thor film is For the Dark World, which is the main aspect of the film was, Loki was put in prison. Loki's been put in prison for his wrongdoings on Earth and trying to make out he was king and trying to take over the human race. And he gets put into prison, obviously. And Thor has to fix basically what Loki's done to the Nine Realms, like fix everything he does. Obviously he does that all the time. But he's in prison, and obviously the Dark Elves come back from a while back. Obviously Bo, who is Odin's like uncle or whatever, brother, he was supposed to have killed Malekith and the Dark Elves, but he didn't. And there's this energy source, which is called the Isa, which goes into people and makes them more powerful. It's a powerful thing. And obviously Thor has to seek out Loki's help, and they have to sort of team up and defeat the Dark Elves and sort of sort out the Isa, because the Isa goes into Jane properly. There was something else I was going to say, but I can't think now. But yeah, they both team up and they go and try and fight the Dark Elves together, and they try and take the Isa out and destroy it, but that's a thing. They find out that you can't really destroy it, really. And obviously Loki dies protecting Thor in the Dark World as well, and Thor gets upset and says, I'll tell Father what you did today. And he says, I didn't do it for him, because Frigga dies in the second Thor film, which is really sad, because she protects Jane. But what you don't know is that I think in the Loki series it was mentioned in like one of the sort of rollbacks of the film, is that Loki sent this rock monster to come kill his own mother, which was his own fault. Because there's a scene that's so powerful that I love in Dark World, which is where Loki is shouting at Frigga, and Frigga says, are my books the books I bring you, are they not interesting enough? And he says no. And then he says a wise king, she says a true king would admit their faults. And then she says, your father. And then he goes, he's not my father, Loki says. And then she says, well, am I not your mother? And then he says, no, you're not. And she sort of disappears as though she's like an illusion, because she's magic, like Loki. And Frigga taught Loki magic at an early age. So these are sorcerers, so yeah. So they have to team up and fight Malekith and destroy the Isa, but Loki dies protecting Thor, and he tells him I'll tell Father what you did here today. And then Loki says, Like, I didn't do it for him, he did it for like Frigga. And so Thor goes off killing Malekith, basically destroys Malekith eventually, along with the Aesir, so that it's all done. And obviously he met up with Jane again because Jane gets angry at him because of the previous film, like the fourth film, where he'd left her on her own at the end and didn't bother coming back. So she's a bit mad and she says, "Where have you been?" And she missed him because Jane and Thor love each other in the four films. So yeah, that pretty much explains Dark World. The third film, which is Thor Ragnarok, which I watched just the other day, actually, it's in IMAX on Disney Plus as well. The story behind Thor Ragnarok is there's different characters in it. There's Cog, who is played by Taika Waititi. Taika Waititi took Thor 3 into a new direction and changed it into a funny, comedic sort of movie. Cog is Taika Waititi in it, and then you have Tessa Thompson, who's Valkyrie, and you have Hela, who is Kate Blanchett. And you still have Loki, Tom Hiddleston, and Chris Hemsworth as Thor. And in the story behind Thor Ragnarok, obviously from the previous, obviously you knew Loki died in Dark World, but Loki actually didn't die, because at the end there's a cutscene, like after you've watched the credits, where he's sat on the throne and he's pretending to be Odin. And he basically takes Odin to like an old people's home, and he takes on the throne like as Odin, but he's disguised as Odin because he's a shapeshifter Loki and he can take different forms pretty much. So I like Loki. He's the best supervillain. And obviously Thor is fighting this fire monster at the beginning who predicts that Ragnarok is going to come and it doesn't matter what you do. And in Norse mythology, Ragnarok was meant that it was the end of the world. Like, Ragnarok literally meant that it was the end of the world and that Asgard would fall, pretty much. And obviously, Odin dies, sort of his soul goes off somewhere to like Viking heaven, because they believed in like Viking heaven where they was like up in the stars. I think in the Dark World, when Frigga dies, there's a lantern sort of thing, and they actually believe the soul goes up into the stars and like they go to some sort of Viking heaven. So yeah. So Odin dies, and he says before he leaves, he says to Loki, your magic was so strong I couldn't actually fight it off. So this is all Loki's fault for putting Odin in a home, because they go to the home and he's not there, and Loki and Thor are, arguing and stuff, and there's these people that come up to Thor, which is funny, and say, "Oh, I'm sorry Jane dumped you," and then they go, "Can we have a picture?" And they have a picture, and like Loki's like, "Oh, this guy's falling," and Thor says it was a mutual dumping. She dumped me, and then obviously Loki pats his back like, "Yeah, I know." And so they go to Doctor Strange, because Doctor Strange is in it, who is played by Benedict Cumberbatch, and he finds their father, and obviously Loki falls from mid-high and says, "I've been falling for 30 minutes," and says this funny line, and then he says, he gets angry at Doctor Strange, which is Benedict Cumberbatch, which I found really funny, and then they disappear. And then Odin says that Ragnarok is still coming, and he says, "Why? I thought I defeated, the fire monster, I don't know his name in it." And he said, "No, it's still coming, and Hela's coming, your sister," because Hela is their long-lost sister in the comics. But in the actual Norse mythology, Hela or Hel is actually the queen of the underworld in Norse mythology, and is actually Loki's daughter, which I think I said to Jeff about it as well. And so Hela comes and causes destruction, and this was a different take on the villain this time around, because it was Hela who was Kate Blanchett this time instead of Loki all the time, because Loki's always the villain all the time. So in this one, it was kind of like a hero sort of thing. But yeah, they have Hela who causes destruction, and long story short, they both team up to try and fight Hela, and then obviously there's this really cool moment where they're in the lift. And obviously there's this villain called the Grandmaster, who is cousins. I'm trying to think now. His cousins to I don't know his name, but his cousins to somebody. The Collector. That's it. His cousins to the Collector, the Grandmaster. So they have a Grandmaster who makes Thor fight Hawk, which is Matt Ruffalo as well. I forgot he was in it. And they have this fight as well in it, but there's a scene where Loki and Thor are in a lift, and they say, he says, "I love you, Loki, I've always loved you, but, we're two different people, and we're not going to stay together. I thought we would fight side by side together, but we won't. We never will." And because Loki says, "I might as well stay on, Sikaar, not Sikaar, is it Sikaar? Yeah. And, live a life there." And he said, "Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That's a good idea." And they have this conversation, and he says, "I love you, but we're both different people, and no matter what I do to change you, you're still going to be Loki." And he ends up being Loki again, but Thor outdoes him and puts the electrocution, little thing that he had on in the beginning, and electrocutes Loki. But obviously Cog comes along and helps him and says, "You're probably in need of great leadership as well." There's also a funny bit where Loki's tied to a chair because of Valkyrie, because he says to Valkyrie, "Oh, you're a Valkyrie. I thought they all died out." And then he says, "Choose your words wisely." And there's this big fight. And I remember in the outtakes of Thor Ragnarok, there was a scene where there was a bit where Tessa Thompson, who plays Valkyrie, actually kicks Tom Hiddleston Loki in the balls, which really hurt. And she apologised, of course, but I found it really, not cool. I mean, it's kind of funny because Valkyrie fights Loki and he's always getting beaten up by a girl, because he gets beaten up by Sif in the Loki series as well. So, long story short, obviously Ragnarok happens and destroys Asgard as well. And then you have all the funny stuff in it as well, and you have a mini play at the beginning, which is really funny. So it was taken to a new direction, and it was kind of funny and fun all round. But recently I read something up about Chris Hemsworth. Anyway, I'm going to talk about before I actually end this video, because it'll get too long. It's already 23 minutes because I've been talking about this. But Chris Hemsworth said that his Thor character was very boring in the first 2 Thor films, which I disagree, because his character was really investing in Thor the Dark World. I know the Thor the Dark World wasn't a very good film at the time because it flopped, which I disagree. I actually like Thor the Dark World. I like the film, and I like what it's based around. But he said recently that his character was boring, and that it was cool that it was that Taka taking on his character as an interesting character and made it less boring, which I disagree, because his character was really interesting in Thor and Thor the Dark World, and he just said that it was plain boring and my character just wasn't shaping, there wasn't form until Thor Ragnarok came. And obviously now you have Thor Love and Thunder, which I'm not very happy about, because, Loki, who is Tom Hiddleston, won't be in it, as far as I'm aware. And he's filming the Loki series at the same time that was probably filming. Well, he's probably filming it round about now, which I will be watching on Disney Plus because I watched the first season. And I'll probably have something to talk about then if I'm watching that. But yeah, I'll let you know what I think for Love and Thunder. But for Love and Thunder, I think it's a really rubbish story. I'm not a big fan of it. It still has the humour in it. Taka's still kept the humour in it, but I don't agree with Chris Hemsworth when he says his character was boring in the first two films. And then it got interesting in the third and the fourth now. I think it's just the fact that he had more freedom and he took the character in a different direction because he weren't shaping, as he says. But I wouldn't say his character was anything but boring, but that's his opinion and that's what he has to talk about. So yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about today, guys, because this video is really, really long. I'm really sorry if I've bored anyone or you haven't, if you're still watching the end, if you're still watching this video, then I'm going to say a word at the end of this video, which is dolphin. If you're still watching or you've fallen asleep already, I'm going to say dolphin is the word if you're still watching. But I do appreciate all your support and I really thank you for supporting my channel lately. I've had really nice comments from everyone who's been engaging with all my videos. So anyway, guys, I hope you have a wonderful Monday. It's a new week and I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye, guys.